Hello and welcome. Welcome back. Welcome if you're new, but if you're new, I highly doubt that this is where you're starting. But maybe if you are a family member, maybe if you are a wife, this is where you're starting. So welcome. My name is PJ and I'm an alcoholic. This is another chapter of the big book, a big book study, the way I see it, because I can only present it the way that I see it. We've gone through several chapters so far. Bill's story. There is a solution. More about alcoholism. We agnostics. How it works. Into action. Working with others. And here we are, chapter 8. Chapter 8. We're getting there. We've made it pretty far. To the wives. To the wives. Now remember, this was written in 1930 something. So to the wives made more sense. It was seen as a predominantly male problem, that of alcoholism. Now today, 2023, we recognize and we fully realize that alcoholism affects all genders, all races, all shapes, all sizes, and even all ages. Some of us make it there sooner than others. Making it there early, I think, is a blessing. That being said, is making there late. It's okay too. It's never too late to turn a new leaf and create the high quality life that you always wanted, free of alcohol, free of drugs. So here we are, chapter 8, to the wives. You can think of this to the partners, to the families, maybe even to the kids. I don't know if that's applicable, but we're going to read it. We're going to read it and we're going to find out what this is all about. Chapter 8, to the wives. Let's get into it. Let's see what it says. Chapter 8, to the wives. To wives. With an asterisk. Written in we're going to read the asterisk first because it's right there at the top. Written in 1939. When there were few women in AA, this chapter assumes that the alcoholic in the home is likely to be the husband, but many of the suggestions given here may be adapted to help the person who lives with a woman alcoholic, whether she is still drinking or is recovering in AA. A further source of help is noted on page 121, and we are here on page 104. So as mentioned, I think this is like to the family. I will know, if you are a family member, I highly suggest getting involved in a program that Bill's wife started, which is called Al-Anon. It is for the family. It is a support system, a support group for loved ones of alcoholics. They also have one for kids. I forget what it's called. It's like adult children of alcoholics, ADOC. Something like that. So, let's see what it has to say. With few exceptions, our book thus far has spoken of men, but what we have said applies quite as much to women. Our activities in behalf of women who drink are on the increase. There is every evidence that women regain their health as readily as men if they try our suggestions. I can vouch for this. Very true. But for every man who drinks, others are involved. The wife who trembles in fear of the next debauch, the mother and the father who see their son wasting away. Among us are wives, relatives, and friends whose problem has been solved, as well as some who have not found a happy solution. We want the wives of Alcoholics Anonymous to address the wives of men who drink too much. What they say will apply to nearly everyone bound by ties of blood or affection to an alcoholic. So here it's saying is that they're encouraging wives of Alcoholics Anonymous members to address wives of men who drink too much. Like for you as a wife, as a family member, if you know someone else who is part of the family system of another alcoholic, you can reach out to them and just show support and we'll leave it at support, suggestions, guidance, Let's get into it. Let's see what it says. As wives of Alcoholics Anonymous, we would like you to feel that we understand as perhaps few can. We want to analyze mistakes we have made. We want to leave you with the feeling that no situation is too difficult and no unhappiness is too great to overcome. We want to leave you with the feeling that no situation is too difficult and no unhappiness is too great to overcome. I want to leave you with some hope. Share our experience, strength, and hope. We have traveled a rocky road. There's no mistake about that. We have had long rendezvous with hurt, pride, frustration, self-pity, misunderstanding, and fear. These are not pleasant companions. We have been driven to modeling sympathy, to bitter resentment. Some of us veered from extreme to extreme, ever hoping that one day our loved ones would be themselves once more. And it's hardcore for family members to deal with us, alcoholics, addicts. Our loyalty and the desire that our husbands hold up their heads and be like other men have begotten all sorts of predicaments. We have been unselfish and self-sacrificing. We have told innumerable lies to protect our pride and our husband's reputation. We have prayed and begged and have been patient. We have struck out vicariously. We have run away. We have been hysterical. We have been terror-stricken. We have sought sympathy. We have retaliatory love affairs with other men. It's a lot. It's a lot going on, right? It's really hard on our families, and it's very selfish for us to think when we're drinking and we're using that it's not affecting anybody besides ourselves. It's simply not true. Our homes have been battlegrounds many an evening. In the morning, we have kissed and made up. Our friends have counseled chucking the men we have done with finality, only to be back in a little while hoping, always hoping. Our men have sworn great solemn oaths and that they were through drinking forever. We had believed them when no one else could or would. Then in days, weeks, or months, a fresh outburst. We seldom had friends at our homes, never knowing how or when the men of the house would appear. We could make few social engagements. We came to live almost alone. When we were invited out, our husbands sneaked so many drinks that they spoiled the occasion. If, on the other hand, they took nothing, their self-pity made them killjoys. Real hard to balance a relationship, someone in addiction. There was never financial security. Positions were always in jeopardy or gone. An armored car could not have brought the pay envelopes home. The checking account melted like snow in June. Sometimes there were other women. How heartbreaking was this discovery? How cruel to be told they understood our men as we did not. The bill collectors, the sheriffs, the angry taxi drivers, the policemen, the bums, the pals, and even the ladies that they sometimes brought home. Our husbands thought we were so inhospitable. Joy killer, nag, wet blanket. That's what they said. Next day they would be themselves again, and we could forgive and try to forget. We have tried to hold the love of our children for their father. We have told small tots that their father was sick, which was much nearer the truth than we realized. They struck the children, kicked out door panels, smashed treasured crockery, and ripped the keys out of pianos. In the midst of such pandemonium, they have rushed out, threatening to live with the other women forever. In desperation, we have even got tight ourselves, the drunk to end all drunks. The unexpected result was that her husband seemed to like it. Oh, Lord. I don't know. I'm going to highlight that just because it's funny. It's funny to me. It's funny to me. It's probably not funny to you if you are struggling with a loved one who is struggling with alcoholism. But what a mess, right? What a mess. Perhaps at this point we got a divorce and took the children home to father and mother. Then we were severely criticized by our husband's parents for desertion. Usually we did not leave. We stayed on and on. We finally sought employment ourselves, and destitution faced us and our families. Just because we have it, I don't know what destitution means. So we are gonna wander over here and we are gonna check it out. Poverty so extreme that one lacks the means to provide for oneself. Right on. That's scary place for a family to be. We began to ask medical advice as the sprees got closer together. The alarming physical and mental symptoms, the deepening pall of remorse, depression, and inferiority that settled down on our loved ones. These things terrified and distracted us. As animals on a treadmill, we had patiently and wearily climbed, falling back in exhaustion after each futile effort to reach solid ground. Most of us have entered the final stage with its commitment to health resorts, sanitariums, hospitals, and jails. Sometimes there were screaming delirium and insanity. Death was often near. It's just, if this sounds far-fetched to you, if you have been in rehab before, know that that is a mental health facility. You are there, you've landed in this stage when your wife, when your mother, when your girlfriend or your boyfriend has to see you off to rehab. They are hopeful that that is going to be the solution. And when you leave and you go back to doing what you were doing before, this is what you're putting your family through. Under these conditions, we naturally made mistakes. Some of them rose out of ignorance of alcoholism. Sometimes we sensed dimly that we were dealing with sick men. Had we fully understood the nature of the alcoholic illness, we might have behaved differently. How could men... So this is important, right? So for family members to understand what it is that's going on will alter your behavior, your approach, your strategy, your way of existing alongside of this problem. To exist alongside a problem or to find a solution for a problem, you need it to understand the problem. So maybe in this chapter, maybe in this book, it will help you understand the problem. How could men who love their wives and children be so unthinking, so callous, so cruel? There could be no love in such persons, we thought. And just as we were being convinced of their heartlessness, they would surprise us with fresh resolves and new attentions. For a while, it would be their oldest sweet selves, only to dash the new structure of affection to pieces once more. Asked why they commenced to drink again, they would reply with some silly excuse or none. It was so baffling, so heartbreaking. Could we have been so mistaken in the men we married? When drinking, they were strangers. Sometimes they were so inaccessible that it seemed as though a great wall had been built around them. Even if they did not love their families, how could they be so blind about themselves? What had become of their judgment, their common sense, their willpower? Why could they not see that drink meant ruin to them? Why was it when these dangers were pointed out, they agreed and then they got drunk again immediately? These are some of the questions which race through the mind of every woman who has an alcoholic husband. We hope this book has answered some of them. Perhaps your husband has been living in that strange world of alcoholism where everything is distorted and exaggerated. You can see that he really does love you with his better self. Of course, there is such a thing as incompatibility, but in nearly every instance, the alcoholic only seems to be unloving and inconsiderate it is usually because he is warped and sickened that he says and does these appalling things. Today, most of our men are better husbands and fathers than ever before. I for sure want to highlight that part. When an alcoholic recovers and he practices the principles of this program in all of his affairs, he's kind, loving, patient, tolerant, honestly, has integrity, right? He's hardworking. His sobriety, his serenity is contingent on practicing these principles in all of his affairs, including his interactions with you as a significant other. So, if you are married to an alcoholic, if you are married to an addict, and they do actually get this recovery thing, you are in for an extremely pleasant surprise in that individual will be the best version of himself, of herself, that the world has ever seen. Way better than before. I believe this in terms of hiring people who are in recovery, and also in terms of relationships. So, there's a silver lining. Try not to condemn your alcoholic husband no matter what he says or does. He is just another very sick, unreasonable person. Treat him when you can as though he had pneumonia. When he angers you, remember that he is very ill. Right? He's ill. He's sick. He's spiritually sick. Now, that does not give him an excuse to keep acting like this. It might for a while, but he's spiritually sick. So many people are spiritually sick, and it helps me in all my interactions with all humans when I can recognize that individual isn't just an asshole. They're spiritually sick. There's an important exception to the foregoing. We realize some men are thoroughly bad-intentioned, that no amount of patience will make any difference. An alcoholic of this temperament may be quick to use this chapter as a club over your head. So be careful of that. Don't let him get away with it. If you are positive he is one of this type, you may feel better. You may feel you had better leave. Is it right to let him ruin your life and the lives of your children, especially when he has before him a way to stop his drinking and abuse if he really wants to pay the price, right? So if he is just an asshole and he does not want to recover, you might be best to just move on. Now, if you feel that somewhere in there he has a good heart and that he actually wants a better life for himself, for you guys, point him in my direction. Let me help him get out of this mess. The problem with which you struggle usually falls within one of four categories. All right, categories. I like categories. Let's go. 1. Your husband may only be a heavy drinker. His drinking may be constant, or it may be heavy only on certain occasions. Super Bowl's coming up. Perhaps he spends too much money for liquor. It may be showing him up mentally and physically, but he does not see it. Sometimes he is a source of embarrassment to you and his friends. He is positive he can handle his liquor, that it does him no harm, that drinking is necessary in his business. He will probably be insulted if you were called an alcoholic. This world is full of people like him. Some will moderate or stop altogether, and some will not. Of those who keep on, a good number will become true alcoholic after a while. Might be too early for this guy, right? Might be too early for this guy. You're in a little bit of a purgatory in this situation. 2. Your husband is showing lack of control, for he's unable to stay on the water wagon even when he wants to. He often gets entirely out of hand when drinking. He admits this is true, but is positive that he will do better. He has begun to try, with or without your cooperation, various means of moderating or staying dry. Maybe he is beginning to lose his friends. His business may suffer somewhat. He is worried at times, and it is becoming aware that he cannot drink like other people. He sometimes drinks in the morning and throughout the day also to hold his nervousness in check. He is remorseful after a serious drinking bout and tells you he wants to stop. But when he gets over the spree, he begins to think once more how he can drink moderately next time. We think this person is in danger. These are the earmarks of a real alcoholic. Perhaps he can still tend to business fairly well. He has by no means ruined everything. As we say among ourselves, he wants to stop. So this guy, he's on his way. I have a few friends like this, a few sponsees like this. They're candidates to get involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. It doesn't hurt. They can come hang out. Come hang out, see what's good. Maybe work, put a little work in and see what happens. Right when he's in a situation where has begun to try various means of moderating or staying dry, right? Like, maybe a suggestion could be thrown in there. It might just, he might just brush it off, right? No, I'm not going to do that. And just shrug your shoulders and say, okay, right? But the seed might be planted. Category number 3. This husband has gone much further than husband number 2. Though once, like number 2, he became worse. His friends have slipped away. His home is near wreck, and he cannot hold a position. Maybe the doctor has been called in, and the weary round of sanitariums and hospitals has begun. He admits he cannot drink like other people, but does not see why. He clings to the notion that he will find a way to do so. He may have come to the point where he desperately wants to stop, but he cannot. His case presents additional questions which we shall try to answer for you. You can be quite hopeful of a situation like this. So, for the alcoholics who are listening right now, the addicts who are listening, and the weary rounds of sanitariums and hospitals has began. If you are in rehab, if you are in treatment, you fall into category number 3. Maybe you cling to the notion that you will find a way to drink like a normal person. My hat's off to you if you can, but by the time you've reached this point, you're already in category 3 of these 4 categories. So here we are. Again, my hat is off to you if you can find a way to drink like a gentleman. I don't often see it. But can't say we didn't try. Category 4. You may have a husband of who you completely despair. He has been placed in one institution after another. He is violent or appears definitely insane when drunk. Sometimes he drinks on the way home from the hospital. Perhaps he has had delirium tremens. Doctors may shake their heads and advise you to have him committed. Maybe you have already been obliged to put him away. This picture may not be as dark as it looks. Many of our husbands were just as far gone, yet they got well. I believe Bill's wife actually wrote this chapter. So you have to... Sometimes he drinks on the way home from the hospital. For a real alcoholic, alcohol, we respond to the same alcohol as we do oxygen, as if we can't breathe without it. Can't breathe without it. We'll try, but it's very, very tight and distressing to navigate life without it. So we get far enough gone and out of the hospital. Oh, take a deep, fresh breath of air, and by that I mean alcohol. Drink. Let's now go back to the husband number 1. Oddly enough, he is often difficult to deal with. He enjoys his drinking. It stirs his imagination. His friends feel closer over a highball. Perhaps you enjoy drinking with him yourself when he doesn't go too far. You have passed happy evenings together, chatting and drinking before your fire. Perhaps you both like parties which would be dull without liquor. We have enjoyed such evenings ourselves. We had a good time. We know all about liquor as a social lubricant. Some, but not all of us, think it has its advantage when reasonably used. The first principle of success is that you should never be angry. Even though your husband becomes unbearable and you have to leave him temporarily, you should, if you can, go without rancor. Patience and good temper are most necessary. The first principle of success is that you should never be angry, and then patience and good temper are most necessary. So, these will be difficult to manage and maintain. All I can say, though, is if you've been through this time and time and time and time again, and you've been angry and you haven't had patience, you haven't had good temper, has it helped? I'm guessing it probably hasn't. So suggestions from the book. That's what this book is. It's suggestions. So it's suggesting to give this strategy a go. And let's see what happens. Let's read some more. Maybe it'll tell us why. Our next thought is that you should never tell him what he must do about his drinking. If he gets the idea that you are a nag or a killjoy, your chance of accomplishing anything useful may be zero. He will use that as an excuse to drink more. He will tell you he is misunderstood. Things may lead to lonely evenings for you. He may seek someone else to console him, not always another man. I think that says it rather clear. Be determined that your husband's drinking is not going to spoil your relations with your children or your friends. They need your companionship and your help. It is possible to have a full and useful life though your husband continues to drink. We know women who are unafraid, even happy under these conditions. Do not set your heart on reforming your husband. You may be unable to do so no matter how hard you try. A few important things said here. So there's a video on YouTube. You can go check it out. It's called Addiction is the Opposite of Connection. So disconnecting, the husband having no connection with the family, will lead him worse into addiction. Keep that in mind. Watch the video if you'd like. And this other part, it's possible to have a full and useful life though your husband continues to drink. This is what Al-Anon will guide you in doing. In general, we are supposed to be capable of being happy and healthy despite what's going on around us. And as in a married couple, I know that it's meant to be team effort. But until your husband, until your wife recovers, there's still potential to find satisfaction, joy, and contentment in life outside of the status of your relationship. Again, patience can be rewarding in this situation if he finds recovery. And this is suggesting ways in which you can better navigate the path to recovery for your significant other if they so wish to head in that direction. We know these suggestions are sometimes difficult to follow, but you will save many a heartbreak if you can succeed in observing them. Your husband may come to appreciate your reasonableness and patience. This may lay the groundwork for a friendly talk about his alcoholic problem. Try to have him bring up the subject himself, but sure you are not critical during such a discussion. Attempt instead to put yourself in his place. Let him see that you want to be helpful rather than critical. When a discussion does arise, you might suggest he read this book or at least the chapter on alcoholism. Tell him you have been worried, though perhaps needlessly. You think he ought to know this subject better, as everyone should have a clear understanding of the risk he takes if he drinks too much. Show him you have confidence in his power to stop or moderate. Say you do not want to be a wet blanket, that you only want him to take care of his health. Thus, you may succeed in interesting him in alcoholism. I'm going to highlight this whole section. I think that's probably so far the best couple paragraphs in this chapter, the most useful. He probably has several alcoholics among his own acquaintances. You might suggest that you both take an interest in them. Drinkers like to help other drinkers. Your husband may be willing to talk to one of them. If this kind of approach does not catch your husband's interest, it may be best to drop the subject. But after a friendly talk, your husband will usually revive the topic himself. So this is like a slow ease into it, but it's an ease from a friend perspective, not from a killjoy, not from a nag, not from a controlling person. It's an ease in as a friend who can be trusted, who is soft and gentle and capable of hearing them out, despite their thoughts and their ideas often being irrational. You need to be able to have rapport isn't the right word, but if he sees you as the enemy, no progress will be made. If he sees you as a friend who has potential to understand, likely, if you are not an alcoholic, you're not an addict, it's going to be difficult for you to understand. So it needs to be approached cautiously, because the alcoholic, the addict, will feel that you don't understand. So friction and inability to connect can land and live there. So it's saying he might revive the topic himself. This may take patient waiting, but it will be worth it. Meanwhile, you might try to help the wife of another serious drinker. If you act upon these principles, your husband may stop or moderate. This is an interesting couple of sentences. So, solution for depression, for anxiety, is to get out of yourself and to go help someone. If you get out of yourself to go help the wife of another problem drinker, two things will happen. You will get out of yourself. You will be relieved of your depression, of your anxiety in those moments. And then also he will observe what it is that you're doing, and he will start potentially questioning his drinking. Suppose, however, that your husband fits the description of number 2. The same principles which apply to husband number 1 should be practiced, but after his next binge, ask him if he would really like to get over drinking for good. Do not ask that he do it for anyone else, just would he like to. So these are pretty clean-cut directions, suggestions. May I suggest that you study this chapter intensely study it, figure out what it's telling you, figure out which one your husband fits into, and try applying these suggestions. I've never had to apply these specific suggestions to my life. Yeah. Maybe I have. Maybe I have with friends, right? So, but from my experience, the suggestions laid out in this book work really well. The chances are he would. Show him your copy of this book and tell him what you have found about other alcoholics. Found out about alcoholism. Show him that as alcoholics, the writers of the book understand. Tell him some of the interesting stories you have read. I think he will be shy of a spiritual remedy. Ask him to look at the chapter on alcoholism. If you think he'll be shy of a spiritual remedy, ask him to look at the chapter on alcoholism. Then perhaps he will be interested enough to continue. If he is enthusiastic, your cooperation will mean a great deal. If he is lukewarm or thinks he is not an alcoholic, we suggest you leave him alone. Here's another suggestion. Avoid urging him to follow our program. The seed has been planted in his mind. He knows that thousands of men, much like himself, have recovered. But don't remind him of this after he has been drinking, for he may be angry. Sooner or later, you are likely to find him reading the book once more. Wait until repeated stumbling convinces him he must act, for the more you hurry him, the longer his recovery may be delayed. If you have a number 3 husband, you may be in luck. Being certain he wants to stop, you can go to him with this volume as joyfully as though you had struck oil. He may not share your enthusiasm, but he is practically sure to read the book, and he may go for the program at once. If he does not, you will probably not have long to wait. Again, you should not crowd him. Let him decide for himself. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Talk about his condition or this book only when he raises the issue. It's important. In some cases, it may be better to let someone outside the family present the book. They can urge action without arousing a hostility. If your husband is otherwise a normal individual, your chances are good at this stage. So remember, category 3 was the hospitals and sanitariums and the rehabs. A lot of people go to rehab these days. You don't need Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to do it. I've got it. I can do it without that. So, they might be still number 2. You would suppose that men in the 4th classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody has given them up. Defeat seemed certain, yet often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries, right? Like in my opinion, this category is the best to work with, because often they are desperate for a solution. They are on death's door, and they have been beaten into a state of willingness. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. Sometimes these are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. His reaction may be of one of enthusiasm. If he is already committed to an institution but can convince you and your doctor that he means business, give him a chance to try our method, unless the doctor thinks his mental condition too abnormal or dangerous. We make this recommendation with some confidence. For years, we have been working with alcoholics committed to institutions. Since this book was first published, AA has released thousands of alcoholics from asylums and every hospital of every kind. The majority have never returned. The power of God goes deep. You may have the reverse situation on your hands. Perhaps your husband who is at large, you have a husband who is at large, but who should be committed. Some men cannot or will not get over alcoholism. When they become too dangerous, we think the kind of thing is to lock them up. But of course, a good doctor should always be consulted. The wives and children of such men suffer horribly, but not more than the men themselves. But sometimes you must start life anew. We know women who have done it. If such women adopt a spiritual way of life, the road will be smoother. The suggestions in this book, step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, right? So these suggestions are a path to a spiritual awakening, and a spiritual awakening is of a process that helps you revert back to that childlike state of happiness. So I suggest any path forward has some of the same ingredients as the 12 steps, in which you start doing the right thing. You turn your will and your life over to something out there, something higher than yourselves. You work on your resentments, your fears, your character defects. You relieve yourself of guilt and shame. And then you do maintenance once you've cleaned your house, and the road will be smoother. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry over what other people are thinking, and you hate to meet your friends. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You avoid the subject of drinking even with your own parents. You do not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented. We find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know the nature of his illness, but you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. When you have carefully explain to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. It may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially. The same principle applies in dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension which grips the home of every problem drinker will be lessened. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband, employer, and his friends that he was sick, when as a matter of fact he was tight. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can. Whenever possible, let your husband explain. Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he is doing. Discuss with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again. But be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so. There's another paralyzing fear. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and hard times which befall you and all the children. This experience may come to you, or you may have already had it several times. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he will maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever. And now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to us, for it opened a path to which led to the discovery of God. Right? A connection with a higher power is important. Humans, the healthier a human is, the more spiritually fit, emotionally fit, the more reliable they are. But humans are relying on humans is a much more unsteady place than if you can develop a connection with a higher power, and you can rely on the higher power to help you, to keep you safe. You might not always have what you want, but often you always have what you need. We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when we lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. We found that, like everyone else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person. And we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too. If God can solve the problem of alcoholism, he can solve your problem too. This is important because I would like to argue that The solution for drinking, the solution for alcoholism, for addiction, is the solution for all of life's struggles. If applied fully, wholeheartedly, if you take the opportunity to learn the solution well enough that it can be applied to all your affairs, all problems improve with applying the principles of this program to all of your affairs, alcoholic or not. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought, on the whole, we were pretty good women, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking. But it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as the radically changed attitude towards him, which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can. This is basically suggesting that to participate in this program, which now there's Al-Anon. So for you, if you're a family member, a struggling alcoholic or an addict who participate in the Al-Anon program, you will find a happy, joyous, and free life, free of resentment, anger, guilt, shame, by working this program and you applying these principles to your life. You will get rewarded. Your husband sees the change in you. He might be more open-minded, more willing to participate in the same ideas, the same program. If you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, if you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy, but all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in a new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be. The faith and serenity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. I often say, when there's a quote, it says, every opportunity or every situation is a positive situation if you can view it as an opportunity for growth and self-mastery. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentment. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable and will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband whenever there is an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit. So it's not always going to be a bed of roses. There will be some difficulties learning to navigate each other, learning to navigate this new way of life. That being said, is just be careful, cautious, kind, loving, patient, gentle, knowing that things are a growing process. I would like to think of myself having reverted back to a toddler in learning, and that being said is the patience and kindness that the world shows often for a toddler is helpful for an alcoholic when they are learning to live life again without alcohol. You and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Next, you and he have a heated discussion. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention. Your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety he wants to make good, yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years. Patience, tolerance, and understanding and love are the watchwords. Show him these things in yourself that they will be reflected back to you from him. Let live and let live is the rule. If you both show a willingness to remedy your own defects, there will be a little need to criticize each other. So if you both show a willingness to remedy your own defects, there will be little need to criticize each other. If you are both showing effort into making improvements in your life, it's hard to criticize someone. It's hard to be mad at someone when you can see that they are sincerely trying to do better. So, expectations are bad in general in life. Try to avoid them, but just know he's growing up as a toddler in sobriety. He knows nothing about being sober. He knows nothing about being happy, and he knows nothing about being happy and sober, and he knows very little about navigating relationships successfully. So patience, love, and tolerance, while he learns to do that, if he is showing sincere effort to do so, is ideal. We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we would like our husbands to be. It is the most natural thing in the world. Once his liquor problem is solved, to feel he will now measure up to the cherished version. The chances are he will not, for like yourself, he is just beginning his deployment. Be patient. So this is what I've been saying. He is just beginning his development. Revert. For myself, I leveled myself with that of a toddler, trying to learn how to navigate life, how to navigate relationships. Another feeling we are very likely to entertain is one of resentment that love and loyalty could not cure our husband's alcoholism. We do not like the thought that the contents of this book or the work of another alcoholic has accomplished in a few weeks what we struggled to do for years. At such moments, we forgot that alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have any power. Your husband will be the first to say it was your devotion and care which brought him to the point where he could have a spiritual experience. Without you, he would have gone to pieces long ago. When resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings. After all, your family is reunited, alcohol is no longer a problem, and you and your husband are working together towards an undreamed of future. Still, another difficulty is that you may become jealous of the attention he bestows on other people, especially alcoholics. You have been starving for his companionship, yet he spends long hours helping other men and their families. You feel he should now be yours. The fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. Sometimes he will be so interested that he becomes really neglectful. Your house is filled with strangers. You may not like some of them. He gets stirred up about their troubles, but not all about yours. Not at all about yours. It will do little good if you point that out and urge more attention for yourself. We find it a real mistake to dampen his enthusiasm for alcoholic work. You should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can. We suggest that you direct some of your thoughts to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. They need the counsel and love of a woman who has gone through what you have. It is probably true that you and your husband have been living too much alone, for drinking many times isolates the wife of an alcoholic. Therefore, you probably need fresh interest and a great cause to live for as much as your husband. If you cooperate rather than complain, you will find that his excess enthusiasm will tone down. And this will happen in waves at times. But it is important for him to be enthusiastic about this. The more enthusiastic he is about this, the higher the quality of the man he is going to become in his sobriety. Both of you will awaken to a new sense of responsibility for others. You, as well as your husband, ought to think what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out of it. Inevitably, your lives will be fuller for doing so. You will lose the old life to find one much better. Perhaps your husband will make a fair start on the new basis, but just as things are going beautiful, he dismays you by coming home drunk. Let's start this one over. Perhaps your husband will make a fair start on the new basis, but just as things are going beautiful, he may dismay you and come home drunk. If you are satisfied he really wants to get over drinking, you need not be alarmed, though it is infinitely better that he have no relapse at all, as has been true with many of our men. It is by no means a bad thing in some cases. Your husband will see at once that he must redouble his spiritual activities if he expects to survive. You need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. He will know of it. Cheer him up and ask him how you can still be more helpful. Right? This is important. It happens. Relapse happens for some people, and if they recovered, but patience. The slightest sign of fear or intolerance may lessen your husband's chance for recovery. In a weak moment, he may take your dislike of his high-stepping friends as one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink. We never try to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation. The slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or his affairs so he will not be tempted will be noticed. Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. This is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. If not, it had better be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to the fundamentals. If a repetition is to be prevented, place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. I suggest reading The Golden Key by Emmett Fox. We realize that we have been given you much direction and advice. We may have seemed to lecture. If that is so, we are sorry, for we ourselves don't always care for people who lecture us. But what we have related is based upon experience, some of it painful. We had to learn these things the hard way. That is why we are anxious that you understand and that you avoid these unnecessary difficulties. So to you out there who may soon be with us, we say good luck and God bless you. Let's read the asterisk. The Fellowship of Al-Anon family groups was formed about 13 years after this chapter was written. Though it was entirely separate from Alcoholics Anonymous, it uses the general principles of the AA program as a guide for husbands, wives, relatives, friends, and others close to alcoholics. The foregoing pages, though addressed only to wives, indicate the problems such people may face. Alateen for teenage children of alcoholics is part of Al-Anon. If there is no Al-Anon listing in your local telephone book, you may obtain further information on Al-Anon Alateen family groups by writing to its World Service office. And there it is. So, I believe that is it. To the Wives, chapter 4 families, 4 friends, 4 loved ones. I highly suggest, if you are struggling with a family, a friend, a loved one, a spouse, to check out Al-Anon. There's a lot of work that you can do within yourself to be happy, joyous, and free despite having the alcohol in your life. And I know you probably look at the situation as it is not your problem. It is not you who needs to change. And I'm not saying that you need to change, but I'm saying if you are committed to this individual, there are adjustments that you can make that increase the chances of that individual finding recovery. So, if you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, doesn't hurt to try to learn more about what it is that you can do to help that individual, if there's something that you can do. And the silver lining is that you will likely find some higher quality in your situation despite what the other individual does. So, I guess as a person, as a loved one struggling with an alcoholic, with an addict, you have to decide whether or not you're going to stay or whether you're going to go. And if you're going to go, it's totally okay. But if you are going to stay and your current strategy isn't working, some of these suggestions may help change the trajectory of the current situation. So, there it is, chapter 8, to the wives, to the brothers, to the mothers, to the sisters, to the friends, to the family, the big book, the way I see it. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to have gotten through another chapter. I'm excited to get through the first 164 pages. I would like to start doing some YouTube shorts on the steps, YouTube shorts on the traditions, YouTube shorts on parts of this book that I've highlighted so the videos don't have to be over an hour long anymore. So, thank you for joining me. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you're filled with peace, love, and joy. And if you're not, that's okay. Pray, meditate, help somebody. Till next time.